Okay, guys, so before we go over the actual quiz, let me simply put up what our 4 choices were. And if you want to follow out of the book, let's just go over the evens. And as I already said, the even questions have all the answers in the back of the book. So
We already did that.
we already did this, but we're just going to do it again, right? Because we'll move on to the next thing then. So on page 34, number 2 was please do not write in the book. Don't put little marks like proposition, term, argument. Leave the book blank because the next person will not benefit from learning the material. They're just going to see your answer written in there, right? Okay, so everyone in America, what was that? Term, proposition, argument, none. Term, okay? Remember, you can't say everyone in America, true. That's awkward, okay? There's no thus, there's no so, there's no therefore. So it's not really an argument. Number 4, I think, therefore I am. Argument, right? The therefore gives it away. Number 6, you won't pass. Proposition. I'm going to show you when I do my own. I'm going to show you like how that looks formally in a proposition. And I'm going to show you that and tell you, don't bother taking notes or worry if it sounds confusing. It's just me looking ahead so for you to look ahead so that you can start to see if you put it in the logical form, it kind of makes sense why it's a proposition. Okay, number 8, don't take this logic course. None, just an imperative statement. Number 10, a falsity so obvious that it couldn't fool a child. It's a term. Falsity is really the only substance there. Everything else is just simply auxiliary or descriptive, right? Number 12, it ain't broke, so it don't gotta be fixed. It's an argument, right? Number 14, everything in the kitchen except the sink itself. It's a term. Now, I had these up here. I didn't realize it, but it's okay. We went through it. So I'll just quickly scroll through them. Now, remember the bottom here. What you have to remember is what makes something true or false in terms of an argument. It's much easier to know what works and then know everything else does not work. All right? So number B8 is the only true statement here. The argument's premises are true. Both premises are true. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Okay? And it's valid. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. That's a valid syllogism. If the premises are true and the form is valid, or the syllogism is valid, the conclusion has to be true. You can't say all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, but I don't really agree Socrates is mortal. Now, I know you could literally say that, but you couldn't be reasonable and say that. You have to accept it. Okay, so now you can understand last year in theology class how sometimes I was sitting up here rolling my eyes because I would place on an argument and some students would say, I don't care, I still disagree. And I wanted to say, you can't. You have to either say my premises are false or there's something wrong with my logic. I didn't come out and say it that way, but that's sort of what I was thinking. All right? So if you know that's the only time that you can say this statement's true, then anything else, up here is an argument's conclusion is true, it must be logically valid. No. I could say all clouds are blue, and I could say all Smurfs are blue, therefore all Smurfs are clouds. Now that would be a false conclusion with a valid argument, so I didn't give a good example of what I just said. But I can swap it around. Like if I went up with the conclusion that all clouds are in the sky. If I made some argument and it was ridiculous, but that was my conclusion. Just because the conclusion is true doesn't mean that this is true.
But can you explain the valid again?
Well, valid only means that we didn't get into what makes it valid or not. Okay. But for now, we're just saying that if you have, if there's nothing wrong with your logic, if the whole thing's a valid argument, right?
It's like generally accepted.
Yes. Well, then you have to accept the conclusion if the premises are true.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what's nice about this? How can I say? if you've ever been in a discussion with somebody and you said to them, look, I get your point and I agree with you, but I don't think it makes sense the way you said it. I mean, that would be like a common language that we would use. Look, I agree with what you just said, but how you said it doesn't make any sense. What you are literally saying is your conclusion is true, but your logic is not. So I agree with your logic. I agree with your conclusion, but you didn't say it right. So it's not a convincing or valid argument, right? Other ways here, if an argument's premise is true, its conclusion is true, it must be valid. Not necessarily, okay? Not necessarily. Because, again, you can have the all pigs fly and pigs are cloud. I can come up with a valid argument that's just all nonsense. So the other thing you have to get used to is, and there's only a few things we have to unlearn. If I were talking with you and I said, hey, it's a valid argument, you might say, see, he agrees with me. No, I didn't say I agree with you. I just said you have a valid argument. Your premises are wrong, okay? So, like from a Christian Catholic standpoint, here's for instance, if I were to say to somebody, sacred scripture was something that came out of Christian tradition. Christian tradition was preserved by the church. Therefore, sacred scripture is something that came out of the church. Now, from a Catholic standpoint, all those are true. Those are two true premises. That's a good, valid argument. So you have to accept the last argument. But if I'm talking to a Reformed theologian, he's not going to agree that the scripture came out of the tradition of the church. All right. So he'd be able to say to me that's a valid argument. He's not agreeing with me. He disagrees that my reasoning is good, but he disagrees with one of the instances or the premises. All right. I don't want to go over this and over this because it can get confusing. Let's go through your actual quiz, and then we'll come back to this. Okay. So your actual quiz was the odds. On 34, number 1 was the word everyone. What is that? Term, proposition? Term. Yeah, very, very. Now, the tricky thing is that terms are typically not one word, all right? They're typically not one. They could be, but they're typically not. Number 3, everyone in America and in the rest of the world as well. Term. Because really, everyone, it's the same thing. It's everyone. All the other stuff is descriptive about it, okay? Number 5, are you mad? None. It's just an interrogative sentence, okay? It's like get out, that type of thing. Number 7, you won't pass because you haven't studied. It's an argument, all right? I mean, we could probably build that into a syllogism if we had. People who study pass a course. And we'd have to do something different. We'd have to say, well, we could say people who study pass a course, people who don't study don't pass. We have to build that up. I should have done that off the cuff. Leave it off.
What was that one?
That's number 7, is you won't pass because you haven't studied. It's an argument. Because, so, therefore, look for those terms. That they not guarantee that it's an argument, but they're going to lead you to believe that there's something there. And again, these type of arguments are usually just a conclusion and a premise. They're usually missing a part. Nobody talks in awkward syllogisms. All right? And the ones I made up myself, I'll show you why that's the case. Okay, number 9. Please be quiet. It's none. It's just an imperative sentence. All right? Why is this important? Think of political slogans. Remember, some of you guys that had me last year, I told you slogans are not arguments. I mean, slogans are technically just fine, but when they take the guise of an argument, that's when we have trouble. So they might be convincing, and they might compel us to either be agitated by what they say or to go with what they say, but they're not arguments. They're just advertising ways to get us into their camp, if you want to say it that way. Okay, 11, God exists. This was a little tricky.
Proposition.
It is a proposition. I'm sorry. Are you going to say that, Mr. Marco? Now, once I teach you how to put things into logical form, this will make more sense. And we would say, how would we say that? All that which is God is that which exists. I'll show you that. Nobody talks like that, but that would clear it up. Number 13, you're weird. You are weird. No, that one's,
Proposition.
it's a proposition. It's sort of the same, on the same line as God exists, okay? And again, some of this will be clearer once I show you how to put them into logical form. Number 15, ouch. None, yeah, just an exclamation, okay? It's just an exclamation. All right, in B, number 1, if an argument is logically valid, so everything about the argument is good, okay? Its conclusion must be true. True or false?
These ones messed me up.
Yeah. Well, they're a little harder. And we could stay on them a long time. Sometimes it's still tricky. Sometimes this stuff it's better to come back to in a week or so. It makes more sense. No, it's true. Okay? If an argument is logically valid, its conclusion must be true.
Wait, isn't that false?
Hold on. It does look false. Let me make sure. If an argument, let me see. You would think that premises also have to be true. Okay.
I used the flow
Go back on the
chart.
quiz, give me that 0.5.
You see that
Yes.
there's a flow chart.
It tells us to
On
use a
page
chart on the
32.
page.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was also hard.
Yeah, I
Actually, I don't want to.
understand.
Yeah, because right there's no an argument made of false propositions and
Let me do this.
One page back.
So is it true?
Let me do this.
I don't know what I put.
Last year I was, I tutored 2 college kids through a logic course, and a couple times I have the answer keys to all of these, and I write them down in my book, and then I look at them later. And I found a couple errors. That could be one. Let me just go back and look over that. I don't like making a call up here because I want to see what Crafe was thinking, how he wrote that. Because it had to be a typo. The guy's very bright. All right. But anyway, if an argument's conclusion is not true, it cannot be logically valid.
False.
It is false because you can have a conclusion that simply is ridiculous, but the argument's still a good argument. All right. Number 5, if an argument's premises are true and it's invalid, its conclusion must be false. Must be false. That is false. I mean, it doesn't mean that it must be false.
There's Mike.
It's an invalid argument, but it doesn't mean the conclusion must be false. 7, if an argument's premises are true and its conclusion is false, it must be invalid. If an argument's premises are true and its conclusion is false, it must be invalid. No, it is true. Yeah, it has to be true. Okay, this will be easier. Let's do it this way.
So B1's just empty for now?
Leave it. I'm going to look back. I'm going to stick with what it says, but I'm going to look back.
Just for B1, like there's an example. It says, "I'm a cat, and all cats are gods. Therefore, I'm a god." Like following that those are true would make that valid, but the premises in themselves are false.
So if the argument is logically valid, the conclusion must be true. So therefore,
So I'm saying, like it says, "I'm a cat" on page 32, second example.
I'm a cat, and all cats are gods, therefore.
So following that logic, that conclusion would be true, but it's faulty because it's one of the premises.
So it'd have to be false. Yeah, I don't know how else that would be, unless I did a typo. Don't worry. Pointal fixes, we'll figure that. Okay? Okay, here's ones I made myself. Every little bit helps. Okay, now remember, it's probably going to behoove you to copy these down, because you're never going to see something on the quiz that was not in the book or off my screen. Okay? It is? Is that what you think? Does anybody disagree with her? Is it a proposition? Yes, it's a proposition.
Look at me.
Okay, now I have a pop-up,
Bless you.
and with the pop-up, you need not be concerned with it. I'm going to start trying to show you like what comes ahead, and the reason why I'm doing it now is not to add confusion, but it may make something click. So you need not worry about what's in my pop-up, only whether that this is a proposition, argument, or a premise. But I'm going to try to give you a little bit more meat behind it so you can see. Okay? If I had to put that into logical form, and there's not always one logical form, how I would do it, and TW is that which. not every person uses it, but I've always used it that way. I would say all that which is every little bit is that which helps. Nobody talks like that, unless you're from Downton Abbey. Nobody talks like that. All that which is every little bit is that which helps. So now the reason why I'm showing you this is because that which is every little bit is a term. That which helps is a term. The fact that I put all in is, you'll learn later, I made it an A proposition. Okay? So all that which is every little bit is that which helps. Which is how we would never say it like that in the real world. We just say every little bit helps. But we're talking in terms of a proposition. Now, what you guys are going to do, like I said, with your, points that you'll send me, journal things, is you're going to go into the news and you're going to look at their arguments. And you're probably going to be aghast and wonder how people got a job. You're going to say, this is terrible. Yeah, but I agree with what they said. Well, I know you agree with what they said, but their arguments is terrible. Even if you do agree. It could be something. Sometimes I listen to Catholic apologists. Now, you already know my prejudice on that. Some of these guys are hacks. I don't care if they do this for a living. I agree with them because, yes, I believe what you say. I don't think sola scriptura stands up for very much scrutiny. But everything you said doesn't even make sense to me. I wouldn't argue that. It's not convincing to me. So just because we agree with something, right, it's called confirmational bias, doesn't mean it was a good argument. So how does this work in the real world? Well, politics is the easiest example. We love to hear things that we agree with. So what are we doing? We're accepting a conclusion uncritically. So we've got to get to the point where we know the difference between arguments, conclusions of validity and invalidity. And then all of a sudden, we're going to be clearer thinkers. Okay? Now, if I wanted to put this into an argument, if somebody said, I don't agree that every little bit helps, I would now have to put into an argument to try to convince that. There's many ways to do it. Here's one way. All that which is worth doing is that which helps. Do you agree? Do you agree that if it's worth doing, it helps? Now, that may be something that we're saying, well, not all the time. That may be something you have to accept. And every little bit is worth doing. Do you believe every little bit is worth doing? Well, maybe not. But if you accepted those two things, you would have to accept every little bit is that which helps. Okay? Now, maybe all you guys are saying, I don't really agree with the premise, but the logic still holds. Okay? It's still a valid argument. So somebody could say to me, well, it's a valid argument. But it doesn't mean it's going to change my thinking. It's not convincing. That kind of thing. Okay? How about an acquired taste for sardines? Proposition, term, argument, none. It's a term. Really, taste is the main term there. Acquired and sardines are just descriptive aspects of that acquired taste. Okay? Now, if I wanted to take that term, now as we get moving in this course and I start to teach you how to bracket stuff, this is going to help. This is the only reason why I'm showing you these pop-ups. There's two ways that I could put that into a proposition. And you haven't learned these terms yet. I can make it a subject or a predicate. If I'm going to make an acquired taste for terms the predicate, then I need a subject. So I could say, some Mediterraneans have an acquired taste for sardines. All right? That's a proposition. I took the term and I threw it in as a predicate. If I say, well, I want to make that term my subject, okay, then I have to come up with something else. Some that have an acquired taste for sardines ate them when they were young. And then you can see how we can build an argument that perhaps people who like sardines, live in the Mediterranean and have eaten them since they're young. And we could probably build an argument out of that. But right now, all we're doing is worrying about what is a term, what is a proposition, and what is an argument, or what is just an exclamatory sentence, so that we can identify these parts. And the only thing you're going to have to really fight is that there's a difference between being an argument and validity, and there's a difference, not a difference, but all terms aren't just one word. Yes, sure. Okay, if you want it, here it is. Come and get it. Now, there's something not there, but it would help you if it was.
None?
No.
Argument?
It is an argument. It would seem more like an argument, but we wouldn't talk naturally like this if I said, if you want it, here it is, therefore come and get it. Okay? That would make this an argument. So here's how I would put it together as an argument. All that which is what you want is that which you should come and get. All that which is here is that which what you want. All that which is here is that which you should come and get. So you're hearing, so nobody talks like that. I understand that. And when you read it like that, that's why I'm saying if that looks confusing to you, don't let it color the course for you, just put it off to the side. But as we move on in this course and you start putting things together in logical form, this is going to help you when you're looking at, you ever look at questions and you don't know what the question says? This will clear that up for you. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, brackets is, I get it. I know exactly what you're asking me. Sometimes, now, it could be a poorly worded question. Sometimes, you know, when they say they or it, and there's a few things in the sentence, you don't know what that's a referent to. So, in a well-worded question, if it seems confusing, putting things in a logical order is going to help you, you know, figure out how this whole thing goes together. Every good boy does fine. For all you musicians out there, every good boy does fine. It is a proposition. It is. Every is all. And it, you know, once you see, you know, all and does is the same type of, you know, copulative verb. So, not copulative. Yeah, it is. The proposition. If I were to put it into logical form, I would say all that which is a good boy is that which does fine. All right. Now, when we start putting these into a logical form, to give you a little shot across the bow of what's coming, it's because we, in an argument, we typically never get the whole thing, and we have to assemble it. And it has a pretty good structure to it. So we're going to be able to identify which is the minor premise, which is the major premise. What is the minor term? What is the major term? What is the middle term? Once we know those things, and you'll know those in the next few weeks, you're going to slowly put things into argument. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this, and then by Thursday, we're going to start talking about terms, more about terms. And then probably next week, we'll get out of this and go into fallacies. And then once we get out of fallacies, then we'll come back and start talking again about some syllogisms. Yes, absolutely. 15 men on a dead man's chest. It is a term. It's a term. 15 men on a dead man's chest. Now, if I wanted to make it a proposition, I have two choices again. I could turn it into the subject or I could turn it into the predicate. Either it's going to come after the all or it's going to come after the is. Pretty much. So I could say, some pirates are now 15 men on a dead man's chest. In other words, they used to be pirates, now they're dead pirates. And they're in, you know, in the ground on the chest. If I wanted to make it the subject, I have to put it in the front. All 15 men on a dead man's chest used to drink rum. Okay? And if I wanted to make that formal, I'd say all 15 men on a dead man's chest are that which men who used to drink rum. Right? But the only reason I'm showing this again is so that you can see this is just a big term. The term does not mean a word. Okay? There are words within it. But anyway. Get out of the burning house.
Ooh. I missed one.
Get out of the burning house. It's none. It's an exclamatory sentence. Now, that being said, we can turn it into something, right? And actually, I fixed this from the last class because the last class, somebody said, well, can't that kind of be a proposition? And I thought, or an argument, I thought, you know what, maybe. And I said, so I'm going to reword it so it makes it clearer. So those of you that had me, you already know this, and those of you that didn't have me, you need to know this. If I put a question on, if I put a question on a quiz or an exam, and it becomes questionable, like I'm not quite sure, then you just get the point. I mean, I do not argue that kind of stuff.
Why isn't get out of the burning house a proposition?
Well, because it's not something you could say true or false. Okay? Get out of the burning house, true. Well, what do you mean get out of this? I'd have to add something before I can make it a true or false statement.
Okay.
So I'd have to almost say, everybody that's in the house that's on fire should get out. That, at least, I can say, that's true. The house is on fire, you should get out. But if I just say get out of the house, it's just exclamatory.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of saying shut up.
Yeah.
Or be quiet. If I were to say, be quiet, I can't study, okay, now I'm building a proposition, And if I tried to say, I need quiet in order to study, now I'm starting to build an argument, all right? But at that point, we're just talking. Okay, I don't want to, yeah.
The question, you said on the pop-up, it said to make the term, it would be the house is on fire. Couldn't that be true or false?
No, on the pop-up I had what? It said,
It said to make a term, it would be like the house is on fire. Couldn't that be true or false? It would be a proposition.
well, I could say all that which is the house is that which is on fire. Because, you see, but I'm saying that could be true or false. When I say the house is on fire, true. Okay, you can't say that to a term.
No, you had it
Had it
as
as
a
a
term.
term.
Oh, did I? Oh, then maybe that's a goof on my part. Thank you. Okay, maybe that's a goof on my part. Yeah, very good though. And somebody else, there was something else. I don't know. Somebody had a good insight earlier too. It's it's amazing, like what somebody, even if you may think that you don't know this well, Emily Shield caught something earlier and said, well, wouldn't that be this? And I said, you're absolutely right. I said, that'd be a really good point. This is the problem with this, and I don't mean it as saying that it's a problem, but it's very acute that you can pull things out like that. When you start getting into logic, every word makes a difference. And believe it or not, that's probably not good for me because a lot of this stuff, when I have these two courses going on, working full time at home, and also taking courses, you get busy in your head, and it looks right to you, and then you really should have somebody else look at it. So if we wind up, and I'll say this humbly, if I wind up making corrections as we go, you already know me, I'm not going to be the one that tells you I don't make mistakes. The only thing I can guarantee is I fix mistakes. But anyway, okay, any questions on any of this stuff? We're not going to stay with this. Like I said, tomorrow, Mr. Ditsky will have you, and then on Thursday, we're going to start talking about concepts and terms. And then by next week, we'll get into fallacies. And then you kind of feel like you're doing something.
I have a question on like the part B.
Okay.
Like the different sections that have like the validity.
Validity and invalidity, yeah.
And then what was like the other one? Like without these two concluding.
Was it in the textbook? Let me see if we can figure out what you're talking about.